So there's an element in martial arts, right, of culture. When you
Yes.
see karate kai learning, even in the states, unless you're at a McDojo,
Hmm.
which are around, right?
Yeah.
But there's an element of adopting culture, right, from where that martial art came from. So
Yes.
like you saw this. I just talked to somebody actually when I was stateside about Bruce Lee's impact
Hmm.
on how bringing, but not just you know. What is it, Wing Chun, and later in the other different facets of what he did, but actually bringing the culture into it because that was one of the big things that he had done that was so looked down upon was teaching non-Chinese people kung fu secrets,
Hmm.
right? And he felt that it was needed to happen. We were at a place societal where we just had to do this and we had to expand. Capoeira, I would say, I could be super wrong, not a practitioner. I feel like it brings more of the culture into the martial arts than any other that I've seen. There's drums, there's dancing. So you're literally learning songs
Yeah.
along with the martial arts. Am I off when I say that?
No, I would say you're correct.
Okay.
But it's understanding that just the way that people are built in West Africa.
Hmm.
So I was just telling somebody the other night, almost 80, 90% of the music in the world is West African. K-pop, hip hop, jazz, country music, rhythm and blues. Um, Almost so many styles around the world that people find amazing. But my daughter dances and she does the K-pop and she's listening to songs by some group and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the capoeira rhythm. And she's like, whatever, Dad. And I'm like, no, that's Isha Shah. That's Isha Shah with the double slap, and I do it.
uh,
And I'm like, it's also a reggaeton. It's also, but that's West
that's
African.
super reggaeton,
It's
right?
like
Yeah.
simple West African rhythms. And
Uh,
she's like, okay, I'm like, it's all over the world. So the culture from West Africa, because it's such a vibrant and very oral tradition and very lively tradition, that just like gets into you and just makes you want to move and makes you want to have good conversations and food. It's everywhere. It's even in
mm,
like American cuisine. It's in American theater. All that. So the capoeira is probably one of the biggest, I would say, just melting pots
mm,
of what that is. Like all that culture from there, all the good parts and some of the bad parts. Right, the bad parts came from slavery, like the trauma of slavery and the trauma of going through that for generations. And so you get a lot of the emotion that comes out in the songs, like any good song, right? But people are learning it. They're learning it in Portuguese. They're learning it and understanding what it means in English. They're understanding the game of life within that circle and that context and learning about life. So most of the capoeira masters are very, very streetwise and very in tune to helping people become, just like any martial arts, very in tune to um, helping people mature and grow.
mm.
But I think the difference in capoeira is that so many of them are very streetwise. You know what I'm saying? They have what we call a militia.
Okay.
So like some people think it means a bad word, like malice, but for the Portuguese or Brazilians, militia is more like you're cunning and streetwise. They don't care how strong you are in capoeira. You're the strongest, you're the fastest. The person that has the most cunning is gonna win the game.
Mm, mm.
Right? It's just like watching what was that? The movie Troy.
Yeah,
And boy,
yeah,
Acquiesce, here's our champion. And he comes out and he's like 7 feet tall, all muscle. And then little Achilles comes out and they're like, ha 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 ha.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then the guy that's the most cunning is the one that won the battle in 1 second. Jumps, stabs
Yeah,
him. Is there anyone
yeah,
else?
yeah, yeah. You find that
So,
in Japanese culture too, right?
yes,
Where is
yes,
they?
yes.
What is that saying? You probably know the Japanese like language better than myself, but he who gets angry first loses, something like
Hmm.
that. Which is kind of why I like the
Like Musashi.
yeah, exactly right. The quintessential anime is like the guy is super calm with the
Yeah.
sword, and I have a joke that it's
Well, I
always
mean, Miyamoto Musashi is probably the best example of not character wise, but the
Mm.
best example of strategy in war. I mean, that's why everybody studies him and why businesses study his tactics.
The five
The
rings.
five
Yeah.
rings.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally survived almost 40 duels to the death, starting
Yeah.
from age
I think it was
13.
54. I think it was 54.
Yeah,
Something around
and then
those
he started
lines.
teaching.
Yeah.
But after that, but before that, his
Yeah.
first duel was at 13 to a seasoned
Yeah.
samurai. Miyamoto Musashi was so good at it that after a while, he would get mad if he killed you, but he hit you on the place he wanted to hit you. He wanted to hit you right in the middle of the forehead.
Yeah.
If he hit you on the cheek and killed you, he was mad.
Yeah.
And then the last couple of fights, he didn't even do it with the sword. He did it with wooden sticks or a paddle.
Yeah, it still won.
And still won.
It's so well because for him it was an art, right? And
Oh,
I think I don't think people realize like I was talking about with culture, like how it brings that into it. The quintessential idea of life and balance, or what the samurai way, like have you ever heard that expression, the way of the samurai? That was designed and created by him in the 15th century, right? Or is it 16th? I think it's 15, something like
I think
that.
it's 15 to 16.
Right? So that was like that his philosophy on life was adopted by the entire culture of the hold on. No. Shimatsu, the Shimatsu Empire of Japan adopted that. That's literally like permeated through all of them. The way they started training the emperor soldiers and all of that is super crazy because when you read the Five Rings, if you're not a sword wielder, you're kind of like he's talking about all these moves.
Yeah,
he's
like
move number 6, slash to the face, and you're like, well, I'm not I don't do any of this. But there's such a reality to his philosophies being permeated in so many elements of even the food in Japanese, how the proper way to eat it. I can't remember the name, but you're supposed to eat in a triangle because all food is designed to enhance the flavor of gohan or rice, right? So you eat the meat, but then with the rice, or you eat the rice and then add the meat and you're going in a circle and then you got to taste the miso soup.
Interesting.
That all came from his idea of balance. When I was learning kanji, sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but
I understand. Yeah.
When I was learning kanji or the 3 alphabets, I would write them on a whiteboard and they would always get mad at me. And I'd be like, hey bro, I just learned 1,500 kanji in X number of months. Like, do you know how hard that? And the Japanese people don't think in that way. They're like, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, it's not wrong.
It must be this first.
And then he'll draw it on the board, and I'll draw next to it, and I'll go, they're the same thing. And he goes, no, listen, your balance is off. Okay, great, I understand what you're writing, but your balance is off. Which means in Hanzi, which is Chinese characters, or kanji, which is Japanese characters, the actual angles, if you're drawing a square, changes the actual meaning of that. Now, apply that to martial arts and BJJ.
And that's why, and I'm glad you said that, because strategy-wise, this is how my team has been very successful against a lot of Japanese fighters and teams, because I understand the process of how they think. Whereas for Americans or for some foreigners, they understand that for the most part, a lot of them are spaghetti in their application of things, where they're very, you must do this kanji this way, this way. If you write an A, it must be this stroke, and then this stroke. If you go down to up first, it's just wrong.
Doesn't matter.
You are wrong. You fail. Yes. So
and they can see in the stroke marks which ones you started with and where it ended and all. And it's like a tracker. In the woods can see that they can see that in the actual strokes because they're trained. So in terms of martial arts, continue. Sorry.
So in terms of martial arts, you get very they can get pigeonholed in that sense, and Americans could get very just too much all over the place. So my strategy has been to, especially when dealing with Japanese fighters, going against Japanese fighters, is to adopt the spaghetti mind into a strategy that works well against a kanji mind. And that has been very successful for us in winning a lot of things in different combat styles. But what I wanted to say was when we're talking about the culture of capoeira and how much it brings to it, is to tie it in, is that most of the Japanese styles were developed and perfected by people who are either upper middle class or upper class. right? Even karate. People are like, they learned how to use the farmer's tools. Like there
Yeah,
was
yeah,
no farmers that worked
yeah.
16, 20-hour days and then went in the field and started. It
No.
was all aristocrats. But the thing about capoeira is that,
Disarmed by the Shimatsu aristocrats who
yeah,
didn't want to be disarmed. I'm going to leave that there for whoever
yeah.
wants it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Um, the majority of the capoeira teachers, or all of them originally,
Mm.
were all either former warriors, right? So
Mm.
maybe they were aristocrats, but the next generation I call slaves, right?
Mm.
They couldn't get away, they couldn't escape unless they used it. They were all hard working. I'm in the field all day, and I still got to practice and sneak around and practice. Kind of cunning mind.
Mm.
So that's why I said capoeira. The culture is not just the music and the vibrant atmosphere and the song and the dance, but it's that streetwise to be a great to be a good person, but to also have common sense and the ability to be streetwise at the same time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, so you can see it in any kind of leader or any kind of politician where they just have book smarts, even if they're a good or bad person, whatever. They have only book smarts and
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's actually streetwise.
Mm.
Like they'll just run through all the people that are book smart.
There's a charisma to them. There's a flow to them,
Yeah,
right? There's an
you can't trick
acknowledgement of
them.
that.
You can't, you know, double back on them with
Mm.
your deals. Like they're waiting for you. They're
Mm.
like, I already know you're gonna do that. That's why I did this.
Yeah.
It's like the best movie scripts ever. Those are the type of people that most capoeira masters are.
Would you call like maybe what the someone who's mastered capoeira? Don't put them in a box by my explanation, but
Mhm.
just in general, okay. Someone who has mastered capoeira might be anti-fragile, right? So if you've ever read that book by chance, so there's
I
like
have not.
there's soft, which is just weak, right?
Oh,
There's
okay.
hard like a rock, but it can still be broken because you hit a rock hard enough and it
Yeah.
breaks.
Yeah.
And then there's anti-fragile, which moves and molds and adapts
Mhm.
to the changes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you'd say it's like
Oh yeah.
entirely based on being
Oh yeah.
anti-fragile.
Very very much so.
What's going on, guys? If you like that clip right there, you will love the full interview. You can check that out right there. I'll see you on the next video. Oh, and subscribe because we got a lot of big things coming up in the near future.